Hi. So originally this was just going to be about Mortal Kombat, which is the big release on movie release on HBO Max this weekend. But since the Falcon and the Winter Soldier had its season finale today as well, I want to throw that in too. So I'm going to do both, and hopefully it won't take too long. First to Mortal Kombat. Now my history with Mortal Kombat is not much. Um, it was one of the most popular video games. It still is one of the most popular video games. But when I was a kid, it was as well, and it was on Super Nintendo, which I didn't have a Super Nintendo, but the across the street neighbor, who was also the babysitter who introduced me to Star Wars and spaceship Legos, so a very influential person in my life, he had a Super Nintendo. And so I think the only times I ever played it were once or twice at his house. I don't think my parents wanted me playing it at his house, and when his parents saw that I was playing it on occasion, or my brothers, I think that they said, "You got to play something else." They said it to the guy who's I was visiting. Um, but I remember the blood effects. I remember some of the characters, and um, just how big a deal it was. And I think I remember that there were movies in the mid '90s, but I didn't see them. I've seen them more recently, and I don't remember much about them. But that is my history with it, other than knowing it is a big deal in the zeitgeist and in the recent history of popular culture. I don't remember much about it. So I come to this movie uh, not the best, only the bare minimum informed, and I liked it. It was what it was, um, and I liked Godzilla vs Kong better, but it was very similar in that it was a movie that knew people are watching for the fighting, so we're going to do the character development, and we're going to do the dialogue, and we're going to do the things that you do in movies, but we're going to give them plenty of fighting, and and there was a lot of fighting, and the blood effects at first I was kind of these are cheap, bad looking blood effects, but I kind of, and I don't know if this was the intention, but I kind of came to the conclusion that they looked the way they did not because they were bad, but because the special effects people were trying to go for the uh, blood spattering thing from the video game. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt there. The it kind of got straight into the world building stuff, and that was fine. Um, Introduced all the characters well enough, um, and yeah, it was enjoyable, and it did manage to make me care about the characters. Um, Not enough to in the most for the most part, or in most cases, to necessarily want to see them all in more movies. Although I think there will be more movies. There was one character that is an exception, and I will get to that. Um, but overall, it was fighting movies are not my type of movies. I like a good fight in a movie, but when that's the whole point, it's less interesting to me. But it's there, it's on offer, and I am nothing if not grateful for things. So I watched it. Now there were two. It was mostly an unknown cast, and I can appreciate a mostly unknown cast in a big blockbuster because when the movie itself is the star, I feel like it should be an opportunity for actors who are not stars, and most of them were not. And even the people I recognized were not stars exactly, but I recognized them, and I just want to highlight them. Uh, Mikad Brooks played Jax, and he is also, well, I know him as Jimmy Olsen from the Supergirl series, which is one of my favorite superhero things, and he was very good. And uh, Chin Han played uh, Shang Tsung, and he was great. I think that I enjoyed him more than the other performances, um, and I think that is in part, at least, because he was just going for it more. He's been in a bunch of things, and I've seen him in some of these things, but what I most know him from is The Dark Knight, where he played Lao, the Chinese businessman who pools the mobsters' money and then tries to escape to China outside of Batman's jurisdiction. And the Nolan Batman movies are not of the flashy scenery chewing performance type of movies. There were 1.5 performances like that, maybe 1 and 2 halves. The main villains, and the one was Heath Ledger's Joker, and the 2 halves were Scarecrow and Bane. But Lau was just another humanish human being who was just a normal guy, except he was a banker for the mob. But in those movies, in movies like that, you remember the non-scenery chewing performances because that's what's there and that's what makes the movie the movie. And he's got some great moments in that movie, and he's got some really great moments in this flashy scenery chewing movie where he's the overlord of the bad characters, the villain characters, and he has his own superpower. He's a Dementor. He sucks the soul out of the people that he deems worthy of being the downfall of. And he gets also one of the lines from the video game, it's finish them. I think in the video game where it's usually one-on-one, it's finish him or finish her. He says finish them because everybody's fighting, except for him because he's too good to fight. He's too powerful. It's not worth his time. But just seeing him all decked out in Dark Lord type of robes and hair, and the way he said his lines, he just seemed to be doing the Mortal Kombat movie on a level above where everyone else was. They knew that they were doing the Mortal Kombat movie, but they weren't doing the Mortal Kombat movie. And so I find myself in the strange position of I do want to see more Mortal Kombat movies so I can see more of the villain. And I think that probably is going to be the case. And then one of his henchmen, his main henchman, is Sub-Zero, who was my favorite character in the video game, initially because he wore the blue outfit and that was my favorite color, and then in a more developed reason, I have my favorite characters are the water-based characters, and he is ice-based, which involves water. But he was one of the evil guy's henchmen. So I found myself liking the villains more. That's often the case. You like the villains more, even though you know that the good guys are supposed to win. I don't know if we'll see more Sub-Zero. It was suggested that could be, but Shang Tsung did survive the movie, and in a way like a Shredder or I'll get you next time sort of way. So looking forward to more of him, and it was just so much fun to see Lau do that kind of role. There was my one criticism is, I guess in the lore the ending makes sense, but in the movie it didn't feel like the big climactic battle was the big climactic battle that the movie was building towards. It seemed like the movie built towards something, and then it gave us something slightly different that in the lore again maybe makes sense and maybe is satisfying to people who are more devoted to it than I am, but I just felt like it was just a little bit random and not what it should have been. So moving on to the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or should I say Captain America and the Winter Soldier, because the series was about Sam Wilson's evolution from Falcon to Winter Soldier, or to Captain America, and now that he is Captain America and not the Falcon, there is an opening in the Marvel Universe for a bird-named superhero, so I just want to make a plug for Condorman. It doesn't have to be Michael Crawford, but he could have a cameo. But since we are now lacking a bird-based superhero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and there's a place for one because the Falcon was one, just consider it. It's already a Disney movie. See, it says Disney movie, a Disney DVD on the thing. Oh no, Disney movie is on the other corner. This corner is where it says Disney movie. No, it says movie. It doesn't say Disney movie, so to speak, per se, but it says movie. But it says Disney movie rewards, so it does say Disney movie. It just says Disney movie rewards. Um, that took way too much time for what's mostly a joke, but what doesn't have to be a joke. Anyway, um, this was well, okay. So I said a little bit about my history with Mortal Kombat, my history with the MCU. Slightly similar, but more filled in because I saw the I saw I rented Iron Man on DVD. I saw Iron Man 2 in the movie theater, not because I wanted to, but because the person who was taking me to see a movie wanted to. And uh, so those were the two Marvel movies that I had seen, and I wasn't particularly interested in any others. Uh, but they kept making them despite that, and eventually, the honest trailer for Captain America: Civil War got me interested enough in that movie that when it popped up on Netflix, I was like, I actually do want to watch this one, and it's a great movie all around, and it's got all the characters, uh, and it was my introduction to Captain America and just about everyone but Iron Man, who I already seen. But my favorite characters in the movie were Wanda, who we got WandaVision at an earlier time this year, and the Falcon, who has the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show. So I got very lucky in my picks that I picked the two characters that were going to get television shows. Um, and my and as far as the Winter Soldier is concerned, my favorite thing about the Winter Soldier was how he interacted with the Falcon. So the Falcon, if there's going to be a Winter Soldier show, it should involve the Falcon. Um, so that's where I came from there. And then since I've seen them all, I know where we are. I know about the snap and the blip and everything. And that is where I was at the beginning of this show. But the fact that I was never interested in a Captain America movie before the honest trailer for Civil War uh, is an important starting point for my Marvel Cinematic Universe journey because uh, it was announced today that there will be a fourth Captain America movie, helmed by the person who was the showrunner for the Captain and the Winter Soldier, and I don't remember his name at the moment, because Sam Wilson evolves from Falcon to Captain America over the course of the 6 episodes, and it got me excited for seeing him in a Captain America movie because it was kind of a Captain America movie, especially the 6th episode just played out like the third act of a Captain America movie, right from the very beginning. It jumps right into the action, and it was exciting and it was cool to see. I've you know, it reminded me of when I was much younger and would first see Spider-Man or one of the X-Men or Batman just appear in costume for the first time in the movie, and just that feeling. And I knew even less about it then than I do now. And I knew this was coming, and yet it still just felt so good to see it. And the fact that he still had the wings was good also, I thought, because I'd gotten so used to seeing him fly. Let's see. So just trying not to say too much, even though it's 6 episodes. It was an interesting. It was, there's 2 main characters ostensibly, but it felt more like it was centered on Sam because Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, he's got an arc, but it just kind of it's there at the beginning and it's there at the very end, but in the middle it just seems to disappear while Sam is training emotionally and physically to be Captain America, while he's trying to help his family. They're in danger of losing the business, selling the fishing boat. I loved that they were fishing people. I'm sure they weren't the big, huge commercial fishing people who are draining the seas of the fish, overfishing. I'm sure that wasn't them. I'm sure they were very responsible. But again, the water. I just love any connection, and so I was excited that was the particular business. And then in the middle, there was also the Captain America that shouldn't have been. storyline, because at the beginning Sam, he gives up the shield because he thinks, I'm not Steve Rogers, I can't be Captain America, and he gives it to the museum, but then the museum, the government, gives it to a soldier who they decide, well, then this person will be Captain America because we have to have a figurehead. We have to have Captain America, somebody with that authority and that costume to inspire patriotism in Americans and fear in the rest of the world. And they give it to this guy, John Walker, and he is a war hero. He's a decorated war hero, but this show's about how being a war hero or any kind of real life type of hero, like a doctor or something, is different than being a superhero, and that's a big reason why, probably, why there are no real superheroes. He, John Walker, he gets the authority. He's happy to have it. He feels like he's doing his duty, and then he just gets it carries him away, and he goes bad. He goes wrong. He has it taken away. He's a little bit of redemption in the last episode, but that's mostly remains gray as far as whether or not he's redeemed. But it's an important juxtaposition to Sam's journey of realizing that his reluctance it's always the reluctance is the key to demonstrating that a person should be what they're reluctant to be, and it is also personified, that reluctance, in the character of Isaiah Bradley, played by Carl Lumbly. It's a storyline. His backstory is kind of like, I think it was Hooded Justice in the Watchmen TV show. Not the Watchmen movie or the graphic novel, but in the TV show, where we find out that Hooded Justice, no one ever knew who he was, even the other Watchmen superheroes, and nobody ever saw beyond the costume at all. And so we learn in the show he in fact was black, and if it had been known that he was black, it would have been a very different deal. Isaiah Bradley is a former super soldier from the same era of Bucky and Steve Rogers, but he had a very different experience with that experimentation than they did because he was black. And so it's kind of like, it's not rewriting history, but it's in the same way that acknowledging the racial sins of America's past is not rewriting history. It's a more complete picture of history. So those I liked that element of it as well, and how he's got the essential conversation with Sam, and he brings forward the thoughts that Sam has, the doubts that Sam has. America won't let a black man be Captain America, and no black man in his right mind would want to be. And Sam decides he's wrong, and that Steve Rogers thought he could be Captain America, and it's going to be a challenge because Sam is not a super soldier. He's more like Batman, except Batman is also super rich and can buy himself all the gadgets, whereas Sam needs somebody to provide the gadgets for him, to augment his strength and crime-fighting ability. But he does it. He puts in the work, and because he thinks it's worth it to do, he believes that it can make a difference, that he can be accepted, that it'll be hard, but he can be accepted, and that's where he wants to be to help fix the world. And this all comes to fruition in a speech at the end in front of news cameras after the big climactic battle, and he's talking to the people he saved, the government officials, and there happen to be news cameras there because of course there are. And so it gets broadcast, and it's another thing in contrast to past Marvel things, where, for instance, well, there have been several Marvel villains that have had at least some moral high ground, and the most notable is probably Killmonger in Black Panther, where his whole thing is bad things have been happening to black people all around the world. Wakanda could have fixed it because Wakanda has the technology and the power but Wakanda chose not to because they wanted to stay secret. And he changes T'Challa's mind. And so Killmonger loses the battle, but wins the war. But T'Challa does it. He starts to right that thing, that wrong, in subtle ways. And Sam Wilson, on the other hand, he gives a speech about how, yes, we beat the villains here, but they had a point. And if you don't acknowledge that they had a point and try to incorporate that into moving forward, you're just going to make more villains. And we don't want to just be able to defeat the villains. We want to there not to be villains, and which is pie in the sky, but it's part of that hopefulness. And Captain America is a very hopeful, optimistic sort of superhero, like Superman. Um, but at the same time, this is a different brand of that optimism. This is not Steve Rogers' Captain America, who was created. He spent some time in the present day, but was created way back in time, not way back, but at a time when being Captain America meant something very, very different. Being patriotic meant something very, very different than it does now. And Sam Wilson is the now version of that. Steve Rogers wouldn't have stood up to the government. I guess he kind of does in Civil War, but he wouldn't have back then. He wouldn't. But Sam Wilson will now. So Captain America wouldn't have back then, but Captain America will now. And that's what makes me excited to see the next Captain America movie. Let's see if there is anything else. There were other elements and other characters. They were fine. They weren't the point of the show for me, and they were as successful as they needed to be. Maybe again, people with more of a depth of knowledge will probably have issues with them, but maybe not. Actually, I know for sure that they will, because I've watched other YouTube reviews. But yeah, that's pretty much sums up my feelings about it. I liked it, and I liked it a lot. And neither of these things are perfect, but both worth the time to watch, and also worth the time is consideration of including Condorman in the Marvel Cinematic Universe now that there is no longer a Falcon, because your Falcon has evolved into the Captain America. So, Condorman. I'll leave you with Condorman.